You're replaceable, you know. Everyone in a job like this is. I'm not being mean. I'm being honest. People in service work sometimes develop an inflated sense of their own importance. Someone needs to tell them. That's not fair.
She threw the cup so hard the lid split open. Make it again. Her voice cut through the breakfast crowd like a fire alarm nobody wanted to acknowledge. The cup sat on the granite counter, cracked at the seam, a small puddle of oat milk spreading across the surface. Every person in the Harlow Financial Lobby Cafe stopped moving. Not dramatically, just that slow, careful freeze that happens when someone decides to become a storm in a room full of people trying to stay dry. Jade set down her cleaning cloth and looked at the cup. Flat white, oat milk, no sugar, served at exactly the right temperature. She had made it correctly. She knew it. The woman throwing cups knew it too. I said make it again. The texture is wrong. I don't pay $12 for something that tastes like a gas station made it. A laugh from somewhere near the back booths. Soft, quick, gone. Jade didn't look for it. She reached for a clean cup. Behind the woman stood Colton Briggs, Vice President of Business Development, second in line for the company's incoming executive director position. He was watching with the half smile of a man who had never once been embarrassed by anything his girlfriend did in public, because embarrassment requires caring what other people feel. His girlfriend, Tessa Malone, had come to walk him to his 9 a.m. She was performing for him now, the way some people perform when they have an audience they believe is the only one that matters. You should stand straighter when you're making it, Tessa said, leaning one hip into the counter. Posture affects the quality. I can always tell when someone doesn't care about their work. Jade said nothing. She pulled the shot. She steamed the milk. She watched the foam form with the patience of someone who had learned, a long time ago, that silence was not the same thing as surrender. Colton spoke, not to Jade, just loud enough. She's very particular. It's not personal. As though that explained it. As though that fixed it. Jade set the new cup on the counter without a word. Tessa picked it up, took one slow sip, tilted her head slightly like she was doing Jade a favor by deciding. Fine, she said. See? That's all it takes. She walked toward Colton with the cup and the room quietly exhaled. Near the end of the counter, a 22-year-old named Aiden stood frozen with a stack of paper cups he had completely forgotten he was holding. He was 3 months into his first job out of college. He still flinched when people raised their voices. He caught Jade's eye for just a second. She gave him nothing. No anger. No reassurance. Just stillness. What Aiden didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the woman behind that counter had walked into the Harlow Financial Building 19 days ago carrying a barista certification, a carefully constructed employment history, and a single deliberate purpose. Jade Monroe was the founder and chief executive officer of the Harlow Group. She had built it from a one-room financial consulting practice in her late 20s into a firm managing 5 business verticals across 9 countries. The company was 3 weeks away from its largest structural shift in a decade, a landmark expansion into Pacific infrastructure that would define the next generation of the firm's identity. That expansion required appointing a new executive director. And Jade had learned something twice in her career that she had never forgotten. Titles told you what a person could do. Character told you who they actually were. Those were not the same thing. The lobby cafe served every floor of the building. Senior executives passed through it 5, 6, sometimes 8 times a day. It was the one place in the building where rank was supposed to become invisible. Supposed to. Jade had spent 19 days learning the rhythm of the room. Watching who thanked the staff and who looked through them, who held the door for the people behind them, who left cups on the counter instead of walking 4 steps to the return bin, who laughed when someone else was uncomfortable. She had filled 14 pages of a small notebook she kept in her apron pocket. The hidden cameras had been placed before she started, professionally installed at the ceiling corners of the service area. The only other person in the building who knew was the board chairman, Gerald Park. Colton Briggs had appeared in those 14 pages 9 times in 19 days. Not for anything dramatic. For texture. The way he stacked cups at the wrong end of the counter, always just far enough to be someone else's problem. The way his voice changed depending on whether he was talking to a man or a woman on the service side. The way he went warm and generous in the lobby when senior board members were present and went flat and absent everywhere else. Tessa had come 3 times. The first visit had been unpleasant. The second had been worse. Today was different. Jade had been anticipating it. The afternoon rush thinned. The cafe settled into its quiet middle hour. Tessa came back alone. She walked in with the specific energy of someone who had been waiting for a smaller audience. Not because she wanted privacy, but because she wanted a stage she could control. She stepped past a junior associate named Priya, who had been waiting quietly at the counter for 90 seconds. Didn't acknowledge her. Didn't slow down. "Same as this morning," she said to Jade. "And make sure it's actually right this time." Priya blinked, moved slightly sideways, said nothing. Jade began making the drink. "You know what I've noticed about you?" Tessa set her bag on the counter with a soft thud. "You have the look of someone who thinks this job is beneath them." Jade said nothing. "I've managed people like that. They think being quiet makes them seem deep. It doesn't. It makes them seem like a problem." She tilted her head. "Where did you go to school?" "I studied," Jade said simply. "And this is where that got you." Tessa smiled like she was offering something generous. "There's nothing wrong with that. Not everyone has the capacity for serious work. This is honest work. As long as you're grateful for it." Near the window, Priya had stopped scrolling her phone. She was staring at nothing, listening to everything. Jade set the finished drink on the counter. Tessa looked at it. "I want regular milk. You ordered oat. I'm changing it." Pause. Deliberate. Quiet. "Is that a problem?" Jade held her gaze for exactly 1 beat. Then she took the cup back. Tessa watched her with the particular patience of someone who understood that the waiting itself was the point. That the power wasn't in the demand. It was in making someone else absorb it without pushing back. "You're replaceable, you know?" She said it conversationally, like she was commenting on the weather. "Everyone in a job like this is. I'm not being mean. I'm being honest." People in service work sometimes develop an inflated sense of their own importance. Someone needs to tell them. From behind her, near the service door, a man named Roy stopped moving. Roy had worked in the building for 12 years. He had mopped these floors through 3 different company ownerships, 2 renovations, and 1 pipe burst that had flooded the East Corridor at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. He was 61 years old and moved through the building with the quiet efficiency of someone who had learned to be invisible to the people who didn't know how to look. He had spoken to Jade almost every morning since she started. He set down his cart and looked at Tessa. "Ma'am." His voice was low. Even. "There's no call for that kind of talk." Tessa turned slowly. The way someone turns toward a sound they haven't decided whether to take seriously. "I'm sorry. She's doing her job," he said. "Speak to her properly." The cafe was completely still. Even the milk steamer seemed to quiet. Tessa's expression shifted. Not anger. Something colder than anger. The kind of cold that comes from someone who has never once been corrected by someone they believe to be below them. "I don't need etiquette lessons from the janitor." Roy looked at her for 1 more second. Then he nodded once, picked up his cart, and moved on. Not defeated, just finished. The particular movement of a man who had said what was true and required nothing from the response. Jade placed the new drink on the counter. Tessa took it and walked out. Jade turned to the sink, ran the cold water over her wrists, breathed once. Behind her, Priya stepped quietly to the counter. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely above the noise of the room. "That was wrong. She had no right." Jade looked at her for a moment. "What can I get you?" Priya blinked, then gave her order, and Jade made it. But she had already reached into her apron pocket, pulled out the small notebook, and added 2 names. 3 days before the announcement, Colton came back with Tessa. Something had shifted between them. Jade recognized it immediately. The way 2 people move when one of them has been promised something and they're both already living inside the version of life where it's been delivered. Colton was working the room. He shook hands with a department head near the door. He laughed too loudly at something Aiden said while picking up his order, the kind of laugh that costs nothing and means less. He was rehearsing warmth, practicing likability. Tessa moved beside him with the ease of someone who had fully arrived somewhere she believed she'd always deserved. They ordered. Jade made the drinks. The exchange was unremarkable until Tessa, mid-sentence, gestured with her cup and caught the corner